In the 20th year of the Glory Age, the kingdom of the Dales fell. With the majority of elvenkind choosing to submit to human rule and convert to the worship of the Maker, the chantry's mission of spreading the chant of light to all four corners of the earth was closer than ever to being complete, and surely, just as the Lady Redeemer had promised, the Maker would soon return to make the world a paradise. Yet the tides of history are a fickle thing. Soon a race of indomitable horned giants would arrive on Thedosian shores, bringing with them a new world order and an uncompromising ambition to spread it through the rite of conquest. In this latest video in our series on the world of Dragon Age, the Chantry will get a taste of its own medicine as we cover the invasions of the Great Qunari host. We'll also invite you to bring some fantasy battles into your life, on the tabletop at least, against the biggest bads your D&D campaigns have ever seen, courtesy of our sponsor, Big Bads. This is a 2-book collection for D&D 5th edition that provides you, first and foremost, with a set of 25 fully fleshed out bosses, with lore, minions, tactics, and everything you need to use them in a campaign. These wild and wondrous world-ending weirdos will give you an epic challenge no matter who you pick. And you can even use the Big Bad Bureau to bring the whole roster into your campaigns, if you think your adventurers are strong enough to show the world who's really the boss. The second part is the Creatures and Curios Compendium, with 100 new creatures and 100 new magical items for use on the tabletop to spice up your adventures even further. For beautifully illustrated, easy-to-reference additions to D&D, look no further. These books are available on Kickstarter, so secure your copies by backing Big Bads. We'll have the link in the description. Before we move on to the next chapter in the story of thedas, let us briefly dial back the clock to the time before the rise of the Darkspawn and the birth of Andraste. In the Ancient Age, 410 years before the founding of the Chantry, a mysterious race of ashen-skinned giant folk from a faraway northern continent made landfall in the southern Qunari wilds, where they established a colony. Virtually nothing is known about this horned race, except for their name, secretly preserved in the records of the Tamathrans, Kossith. During the First Blight, the Darkspawn overran the Kossith colony. Thereafter, memory of the giant folk would fade amongst men, elves, and dwarves, but their twisted, blighted descendants, the ogres within the Darkspawn horde, would terrify the peoples of thedas for centuries. Let us now leap back to where we left off on the timeline, the era of glory, the second age in the Chantry calendar, and the kingdom of the Dales has just fallen, leaving humanity and the Andrastian faith as the monopolistic overlord over the entirety of thedas, at least above the surface. The next 3 ages, the Towers, Black and Exalted Age respectively, would be dominated by 2 major themes: holy war between the rival branches of the Chantry in Olay and Tevinter, and the continuation of the blights. Over the centuries, the armies of thedas had become increasingly efficient at containing the Darkspawn threat. Whereas the first blight lasted nearly 2 centuries, and the second one nearly 1 century, the third and fourth blights, which occurred in the Towers and Exalted Ages, lasted barely more than a decade. During the fourth blight, the armies of the archdemon Andorral were defeated by a pan-Thedosian army, united and led by the most unlikely of leaders, Grey Warden Garahel, an elf born in an alienage slum. However, these triumphs came at a cost, for after the fourth blight's conclusion, the famous griffins, which the Grey Wardens had traditionally rode into battle, went extinct. In the 6th Chantry epoch, the Steel Age, a new people introduced themselves to thedas. In 630 Steel, a race of ashen-skinned giants sailing from their mysterious homeland far in the northern hemisphere landed on the tropical island of Parvolan, where they conquered the isle's indigenous human population. These invaders were most likely the descendants of the horned kossith who founded the doomed colony in the Qunari wilds in the Ancient Age. But in the millennia since their last appearance on Thedosian soil, the horned behemoths had rebranded. Their old culture, old gods, and even their old name had been abolished. They now called themselves Qunari, followers of the Qun. Founded by the philosopher Ashkari Khoslan in their far-off homeland at an uncertain date, the Qun was not a religion, for it worshipped no gods. Instead, it was a form of social architecture that governed Qunari society, implementing an extreme form of complete and total conformity upon all its followers. To a Qunari, individualism is the greatest of sins. The Qun teaches that their entire civilization is a single organism, and that every individual is a single cell, responsible for fulfilling whatever role it has been given to make the body function. This belief is reflected in the tripartite nature of Qunari civilization, which divides society into three segments: the military, which represents the organism's body, the workers, which represent the organism's mind, and the priesthood, which represents the organism's soul. Consequently, Qunari leadership is a governing body of three individuals, with an Arishok representing the body, an Arigena representing the mind, and an Arikun representing the soul. Under the Qun, no social mobility or freedom of choice exists, nor does the concept of love or nuclear family exist. Procreation is strictly controlled through a selective breeding program, and all children are raised communally by the Tamasrans, an all-female branch of the Arakan priesthood. When children come of age, the Tamasrans assign them a social role, which they must then serve for the rest of their lives. So complete is this conformity that the Qunari do not even have personal names, but are instead referred to by their title. For example, in the Dragon Age, a Qunari warrior was found in the Ferelden town of Lothering who called himself Sten, which in the Qunlat language simply meant infantry platoon commander. In the Qun, a person's identity was their role in society and nothing more. Perhaps the most unenvious role to be assigned in Qun society was Sarabas, which means dangerous thing. The Qunari, like men and elves, are a race capable of magic, and much like the chantry, the Qun uses draconian methods to regulate magic use. However, a sorcerer in a sequestered yet comfortable chantry-circled tower lives like royalty compared to how their Qunari counterparts are treated. Sarabas are kept masked, collared, and weighed down by chains their entire lives. Their every moment is spent under the watch of a keeper called an avarad. Sarabas are essentially treated like organic heavy artillery, with the immense firepower they wield kept under lock and key so it can be churned out against the enemies of the Qun. Despite the almost comically draconian nature of Qunari society, there was a paradoxical sort of egalitarianism to it as well. The Qun teaches that all beings are equal, and that there is no fundamental difference between the highest Arishok and the lowest labourer, for they are both simply fulfilling their designated role for the organism's well-being. Whatever one's opinion on mandatory conformity, it cannot be argued that Qunari society is highly efficient. What it lacks in freedom, it makes up for in order and security, with its adherents finding comfort in having every difficult life decision already made for them. Indeed, wherever Qunari armies conquered, the local population was efficiently converted to the Qun through willing conversion or by herding the natives into less than voluntary learning camps. For example, within a single generation, the native human population of Parvolen had been almost entirely assimilated. Nowadays, their ancient culture, whatever it was, has been entirely forgotten, preserved only by the ruins of ancient pyramids, long swallowed by the jungle. In 632 Steel, a host of massive Qunari dreadnoughts crested over the horizon in the coastal waters of Antiva and the Isle of Seharon. Soon, their ground forces made landfall. Thus began the war to conquer the lands of people who they saw not as their enemy per se, but as purposeless souls who needed to be sternly guided to the Qun. Through conventional warfare, the Qunari horde was already an extremely formidable host. Through the sheer size of their giant shock troopers, or the arcane destruction their muzzled Sarabas were capable of. However, the invaders also possessed an advanced military technology thus far unseen by the people of thedas, Gatlock, an explosive black powder, which powered their ship-mounted cannon or Adar. Initially, the nations of northern thedas were completely blindsided by this sudden invasion, and their defences melted like a snowbank in spring before the horned host. Within a decade of landing, the Qunari had overrun all of Ravane and Antiva and trampled through most of the Tevinter Imperium, with only the ancient and magically warded capital of Minrathaus holding out against the foreign tide. After stabilizing their hold on a conquered territory, the Qunari worked to convert its populace. Learning camps were set up, and the locals were rounded up and re-educated. Many poor Tevinters converted willingly, seeing the conformist but equal society of the Qun as a preferable alternative to magister cruelty. Indeed, wherever the Qunari conquered, they found willing converts among the lowest castes of Thedas's hierarchical feudalistic societies. Elves, either living as second-class citizens in alienage ghettos or as slaves to Tevinter mages, were particularly susceptible to the call of the Qun. Despite this, overall resentment against the Horned Conquerors was still strong, and by 655 Steel, massive, widespread rebellions against Qunari rule had erupted all over the Tevinter Imperium. Taking advantage of this, Tevinter forces rallied, and with the help of a coalition of allies from all across the Andrastian nations, liberated the Imperium. The invaders retreated back to Antiva, Rivain and Seharon. From there, the Qunari entrenched themselves, and a decades-long stalemate would ensue. 40 years later, the Steel Age came to an end. Divine Renata, predicting the seventh of the Chantry epochs would be defined by turmoil and bloodshed, declared that it would be renamed the Storm Age. She was right. In 725 Storm, the impossible happened. The Orlesian and Tevinter Chantries, who had been slaughtering one another in endless holy wars for 4 ages now, agreed to band together against their common enemy. Yet even with their forces combined, the united armies of humanity were hard-pressed to dislodge the Horned Colossi from their northern holdings. 3 Exalted marches were launched against the Qunari. The first was successful, with Andrastian forces pushing deep into occupied Antiva. The gains made in this campaign were largely due to the efforts of the mages of the Circle of Magi, whose spellcraft proved an effective counter to both Gatlock cannon and Saribas magic. During this time, the Tome of Koslun, the written testimony of the founder Ashkari, and the most sacred book in Qun society, was taken by Orlesian forces as a spoil of war. 27 years later, a second Exalted march was launched, and was met with almost immediate disaster, with the Qunari crushing the expedition force and retaking most of Antiva in the process. Following this, the Antam pushed southward, threatening the free marcher cities of Ostwick, Starkhaven and Kirkwall. In 755 Storm, a third Exalted march was launched. This time, Chantry forces made an unlikely alliance with the free port of Lemrin, a notorious hub of pirates. These buccaneers had little love for the kingdoms of Thedas, whose ships they had long preyed upon for booty, but they certainly had no desire to be conquered by the Greyskins, and forced to surrender their rugged, freedom-loving lifestyle they so cherished in favour of rigid conformity. Thus, the freebooters united into a massive vagabond fleet, the Felicissima Armada, and raised the Black Flag against the Qunari host. The pirates made a critical impact on the war effort, blunting the power of the mighty Qunari navy, and disrupting the enemy's naval supply lines, thereby allowing Chantry forces to push back into Antiva and Rivain steadily. In 778 Storm, the raiders even managed to defeat the Qunari in a massive naval battle and take the strategically crucial island of Estwatch from them. Despite this, the struggle was still long, grueling and devastating. Years of fighting stretched out into decades, and bodies piled up on both sides. The worst sufferers in this prolonged slugging match were the natives of Antiva and Rivain, whose homelands had been turned into desolate, burnt-out husks, as Qunari and Chantry armies fought over every hill and village, condemning thousands to die of exposure, starvation, or as collateral damage. Before long, the resources of every nation in Thedas were nearly completely depleted, with their treasuries empty and populations at threat of demographic collapse due to wartime casualties. Meanwhile, despite the countless horned giants cut down by Andrastian blades, it seemed as if the Qunari were under no such socio-economic strain. Indeed, it stands to reason that a borderline hive-mind society would be capable of endlessly churning out soldiers in much the same way a beehive produces worker drones. Contemporary Thedosian historians often comment that, in the end, it was not the military setbacks which forced the Arishok's forces to pull back from continental Thedas, but their concern for the mass destruction and death they had brought to the realm. After all, their sacred objective was conversion, not extermination. Their goal was to bring the purposeless Bas into the teachings of the Qun, much like a strict father would teach selflessness and responsibility to a wastrel son. This could not be achieved by waging a war of annihilation, which the chantry seemed determined to make them do if they were ever to conquer the whole of thedas. In 784, envoys of the Andrastian nations of the Ellesian chantry and the Qunari triumvirate gathered on the pirate isle of lemrin and began forging the path to peace. In the titular lemrin Accords, the Andrastian nations recognized the Qunari's rightful dominion over the northern archipelago of Parvola, while the Qunari agreed to depart from Antiva and Rivain. One nation not present at these peace talks was the Tevinter Imperium, which had suffered the most during the initial wave of Qunari invasions. Driven by bitter vengeance, the Imperial Magisters refused to sign the lemrin Accords. To this day, the war still rages between them and the Qunari, particularly over control of the Isle of Seharon. In northern thedas, much of which was under Qunari occupation for over a century, the invaders' impact on the land is still observable today. When the chantry regained control of those territories, they found the thousands of men and elves who had converted to the Qun hard to bring back to the Andrastian faith. Eventually, the church decided that what it could not accomplish through proselytization, it would achieve through fire and sword. Thousands of Qun converts, especially in Rivain, were slaughtered en masse and dumped into mass graves. However, even this did not permanently root out the ideology. Even today, the Qun has a firm stronghold among the humans of northern Rivain, especially in the port city of Kontar. Thus, the philosophy of the Qunari retained its foothold on Thedosian soil. At the beginning of the modern Dragon Age, the Qunari have not yet attempted to invade again, but it seems only a matter of time before iron dreadnoughts appear before the coasts of Tevinter and Antiva, bringing Gatlok, Sarabas, and a new world order to Thedas once more. Since the story of the Qunari does not yet have an ending, our next video will tack to the Alpine southeast, back to the sacred homeland of the Lady Redeemer herself, as we explore the full history behind the foundation of the Kingdom of Ferelden and its struggle against Ellesian occupation. To make sure you don't miss that, make sure you have subscribed and pressed the bell button. Please consider liking and sharing, as it helps immensely. And don't forget to comment. We'll try to read and respond to every comment, as we want to know what you think about this video and which videos you hope to see in the future. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.